Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
So welcome to a Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So I'm your host, Karen Roberts. I focus on helping mainly women lose weight, look good, feel great, and also increase their income. So if you want to come and take a 10-day challenge, come to my website, KarenRobertsCoaching.com. Now today's show, I have Bill with me today, and we're going to be talking about communicating with nature for well-being. So welcome, Bill, to the show. If you can share with the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and share a little bit of your story.
Thank you for inviting me today, Karen. What do I do? I've lived and worked all over the world in many, many different jobs. Europe and in America. I've worked in consultancy. I've worked with teams in innovation, building teams and building products that have never been thought of before. But one of the key things I always looked at was nature. Even as a child, I go down to the beach and look at the water and look at the sea and look at the flow. I was on the beach yesterday and I took some amazing photographs. It's like, what's going on here? What are we seeing? What are we listening? And I use that metaphor to find out how we communicate with ourselves and teams to build teams in a completely different way. It's like we're going to sit down and talk to each other in a way you've never thought of before and ask those questions you never asked before. And there's no right or wrong answers. It's just about how do you feel at that moment in time? And it's about, I talk about flow states. So given what COVID's done, teams are remote, people are on Zoom, they're exhausted, they're overburdened and overstretched. And it's like, you need to take some time and space to make sure you're okay. And that's one of the key things I do. So I take people outside into nature. I'm so fortunate where I live. I take them out and look at the water, look at the dam, go into the forest. Because we're all forest people. We've just ignored it. We've built concrete around us, so we ignore the beauty of nature. So for me, it's like, let's make it simple. Let's go out. Let's ask yourself a few questions. And the beauty about that is, let's go back the next day and see what answer you gave, as opposed to saying, I want an answer now. Because some people need time to reflect. It's like if you reflect on the water, isn't it? I'm looking at the water and going, that wave's changed. Have I changed in that moment? But we're not giving ourselves enough time just to sit and relax and go, it's okay. And that's what I do.
Wow, so true. We just get so caught up in work. And like you say, I suppose, depending on where you live, a lot of people may not have so much access to, they're always going to have access to be able to go for a walk in nature. But yeah, some by the beach, it's very therapeutic, isn't it, to just sit and watch the sea. But we just get so caught up. And as you said, with COVID, I think that's really become heightened, hasn't it? People awareness of it has become heightened. And then the need to actually get out in nature, I think do you think that people are appreciating it a lot more because of this past year of what we've been through?
I think what's really interesting is I think I'm correct in saying this. There's no place in Britain that's more than 72 miles from the sea.
Interesting.
I think that's right. It's either 72 or 75 miles.
Right. So there's no excuse.
And it's really interesting that, it's like you say to people, but do you know if you go for a 10-minute walk or if you drive for half an hour, this is it. And people say, I have no idea what you're talking about, or I've lived there all my life. And that's really quite true. So for me, it's a bit like, let's go out and see what's going to show up. I'm actually writing a book at the moment on using nature to build teams in a completely different way. And it's about how we're communicating with ourselves and the team. And when I'm using water and water flow, it's a bit like, is the water hot or cold? Is your working environment hot or cold? If it's too hot and too stressful, do you have to get out? And if it's too cold, are you frozen within that team to say, I'm not being looked at because the environment of the team is not allowing me to thrive and be nurtured? And what do you have to put in place to build that team? I mean, one of the things I talk about is building diverse teams. So for me, it's a bit like, I want to build this team. There is no job description, person spec. This is the project. This is the work we're going to do. Can you do it? And that frightens people. Oh, I haven't got a job description. I haven't got a person spec. But would you like to join this project and actually build something that you never thought of before? And we're becoming more and more risk averse. You know, we want to put all this in place and then we'll suddenly decide to do it, as opposed to, what if it fails? I think that word's really quite cumbersome and worrisome because there's so much energy associated to it. You've failed. Right, you'll never be able to achieve anything again. You'll never be able to achieve anything again. Whereas I use it, it's just success in a different way, but you haven't seen it.
Absolutely. I think people, those kinds of feelings, it seems so static, so solid. And yeah, you're right. The failure, I mean, it's such a powerful word, isn't it? And that, yeah, nothing's forever, right? Nothing. So just because you failed in one thing doesn't mean you're going to fail again at something else. But for some people, they do internalize it and take that on board.
Oh, so, yes, and it's got an anchor to it as well. Oh, I've failed, so I cannot come up again. I remember being told that when I was a child. You failed. What does that mean to you? Well, I'm not going to understand it, so I'm going to have to flip it. And that's what I've been doing for most of my life, flipping things in different ways and people will come and join you, or they won't, or it's not the right time. By the way, can you go and give me space? Can you give me space to do this? So when you mentioned the COVID thing earlier on, it's really interesting that people are having Zoom-free Fridays or no email Fridays. But what no one's talking about is everyone's sending stuff out on a Thursday night. So you have a wonderful weekend. You've had a great weekend. You're in a great state, wonderful bliss. You come back into work on Monday. And instead of the normal few hundred emails, you've got thousands of emails. And you may end up with 100 emails from the same person who sent them out on a Thursday. And no one's talking about this. And we've been actually overwhelmed. And why haven't you answered this? What do? You spend half a day deleting what's not right and then spending the other time, and you've still got to deliver to the program or to the work you've been assigned according to your job description or spec. And it's like, excuse me, is this really important? And people have been micromanaged from, I want to know what you do every minute of the day. Can you log it? Can you do it? Or you're not on your keyboard, so you can't be working. No, I need a rest. I need a space. There's a thing called the Pomodoro effect. I don't know if you've heard about it. No. So basically what it is, it's really quite simple. All the wonderful thing. So if you're doing an hour's work, you work for 50 and you have 10 minutes off, but you don't have to be prescriptive. It's like, well, I've done that. I do it every day. And it just works, right? I've done this. This is enough. And I've been told to go and stand up, walk out, just walk out the door, walk around the building. And it's just wonderful. And that's where the nature thing comes in. Because it's well known, even if you go and look at a tree, it has an effect on you emotionally and psychologically, because it's given out chemical compounds that de-stress you. So if you said to a banker, go and hug a tree, you might get a good response. But if you said to a banker, can you go and get a copy of the FT and sit next to a tree while you're reading it, that would be different.
That's the way it's the way you say it, right? Yeah, yes. This is, I suppose, key really, is that we totally underestimate, because it's not something that necessarily we see. Like you say, a tree is giving off certain compounds. There's things going on. There's energy. I mean, you can photograph a tree now, Chilean photography, where you can actually see the energy coming off of different living things. So, and we are going to be absorbing it. You know, that's why people are saying just go out for 5 minutes, just ground, bare feet, just on the ground. I mean, maybe we don't want to do that in the middle of winter when it's snowing. But there's no excuse now. The sun's out to actually just go out and just for 5 minutes even. We've all got 5 minutes. Everybody can find 5 minutes. And what they will get from that, tenfold, right?
Well, if the sun's out, you'll get vitamin D straight away.
That's going to help against COVID too. Bonus.
Yes,
win-win.
yes. So for me, it's about, you know, as I said at the beginning, you know, actually taking people out, asking them a few questions. Right. How are you communicating? You know, you're all in this team together. What do you understand about each other? What are you not communicating? And like, look how the nature, look how the forest, look how the river communicates. If you use the example of salmon spawning, you know, they're fighting to get up the river. But we're also fighting against the tide, aren't we? We have to go against the tide, go against the river. But what does a salmon do? When it gets tired, it moves to the left-hand side and it goes into a shallow brook to rest and recuperate. And then it starts again. Whereas we're just fighting against the flow. Where I say, this is coming at me, this torrent's coming at me. Can I just sidestep and take time out to rest? And then I can start it again. I mean, if you put a huge, great boulder in the river, if you're walking up, then it'll separate it. It's a bit like, and then you do it with a weir. So how would you have your own weir at work to stem the flow? If you let all the water out and flowed, and you've got this torrent coming from your boss or your team, you'd want to step out the way. Oh, by the way, this is going to happen today, Bill. Whoom. Whereas, by the way, do I have the structure to cope with this within a work situation? And can you give me the tools and techniques to work with it at the same time, as opposed to saying, we're now opening the floodgates, and you're only going to get hit. And no one talks about this.
What do you think's happened and how long has this been going on for? All this, you know, I agree that there's so many people that are feeling very overwhelmed. Their job description, it seems like the managers or whatever the hierarchy is, are putting more and more on their plate. More KPIs, more, you know, they've got to hit these goals. They've got a constant. Now that obviously is going to cause stress. So they're releasing cortisol, the stress hormone. So what you're saying about just taking a break and going for a walk in nature or sitting by the sea, or that's going to have a huge impact on their health.
Yes.
Right? It's not just about helping them actually achieve whatever goals they've got in their job or completing the project or whatever. So from a work point of view, it's going to help by reducing the stress hormone. But actually, do people realize the damage all this is doing? Like you said, that, you know, if you go in and look at so many emails that you've got to deal with, that's stress in your body. Do people really realize how much damage that is doing to their health?
Well, yes, and it's also having that. It's also having that conversation, and it's about the language one uses. I mean, on my website, I've got language games. How does a biologist explain to an engineer how a forest works? Because the engineer is coming from a rational, logical, formulaic perspective, whereas a biologist is saying the sun comes out, it hits the leaves on the trees, chlorophyll, photosynthesis, boom. You have to put it into a manageable state that other person will understand. And then someone says, well, I have to ask you a question. And then someone gives you an answer, and you went, that's your answer. It's not the answer I want. But then no one reflects them or mirrors what they've said to them. Just go and do this work. Or what does that mean to you? Well, here you are. I'm managing you. This is what it's all about. No, hang on. Can we sit down and actually work out what we have to do?
Interesting. Have not had that thought before. Yeah. Yeah, because everybody is different. Some are more analytical, some are more, it's all about the feelings, some are. So, yes, so learning the different sort of personality types would help maybe, so that you're aware of how to talk, how to communicate, or to get, I suppose, the best out of your team. Is this what it's all about?
Well, I use the example that we're on two parallel staircases. What Jung talks about, we're on a spiral. We're going up and down on a spiral. So you're on a different step to me, and I want you to do a piece of work. Do I ask you to come to my step, or do you go on to that person's step and then say, right, now I know where you're coming from? This miscommunication is one of the key things of why work doesn't get done properly. Or people say, well, I didn't understand what you said. Well, can you reframe it? Can you give me a question I can understand? Because you can switch someone on and off by just changing a word in a sentence. You know, people will stand up and you go into a room. Hello, I'm Bill. I do this. What did I just say? And someone feeds it back to me and said, no, I didn't say that. Can you tell me what I really said? So you've got a complete mismatch just from that beginning, as opposed to, well, I'm going to tell you everything we're going to do. And, you know, if you've got a good manager or a good leader, they would understand that. And what you said about the profiling, there's lots of profiling you can do. There's Myers-Briggs, there's all the other stuff. But the point is, it's saying to the people in the room, this is what we're doing. And the stuff I said at the beginning, you'll get people at the front, the extroverts. Right, Bill, we're going with this plan. Right, we'll get it done. Today's Monday, it'll be done by Friday. And the people who may or may not be introverts at the back are sitting there saying, well, I understand what you said, but I'm going to have to go away and write down my notes. I'm going to have to go away and reflect at it. Can you give me a couple of days to come back and say, is this what you really said? When the people at the front are jumping up and down and said, well, we're going to do it by Friday, aren't we? And you've got these teams pulling and pushing each other to say, this is what we're going to have to do. And that's why people get annoyed, frustrated, or do I stay or do I go?
Right. Yeah, that's huge. So really it is, I suppose, about people, we've got to become aware, or we've got to find a way to become aware that not everyone's the same. We're all different, and to just, my way is going to be different to their way. So maybe I've got to speak to them in a slightly different way to get the best out of them. Well, that's what I suppose, that's what a good team leader, business owner, whatever, manager is all about. So do you think there's a real, is that what's going wrong, should I say, these days? Do you think there's a real, that's what's missing?
Well, I mean, you've got a strategic leader, a collaborative leader, an autocratic leader, and it's like, my way. It's my way or not, or we'll collaborate and we'll do this. And then people say, right, how are you doing this? What leadership? And again, being communicated. No, it's my way or out the door, or we're all in this together. Or by the way, we've got certain goals to reach. I don't like the word goal, because goal means you're encased in a cell, so you can't really do anything. It comes from the Gaelic. It's about a jail. That's what goal really means.
Ah.
It's a jail. So I'm actually enclosed in this space that I can't get out of, and you have to deliver to this goal. So yes, again, as I said, the language and communication. Some people, what are your goals for this week on your plan? Right, we'll do it. And other people said, well, if you want me to do that, I cannot do this.
Right.
And then you say, well, by the way, while you're doing this and you're really good at this, would you like to do all of this? And it's about that. It's about that flow state, and that's what I talk about. So basically, are you in and out of flow? And can you actually be in flow without recognizing it? Sometimes I'll sit here and say, I've got this to do, and 4 or 5 hours have passed. And I've just done the work. I'm writing some stuff at the moment, and some days I can't write more than a paragraph. And other days it's like, I've written 13,000 words, without even thinking about it. And wouldn't it be wonderful if you're allowed that work to say, if I'm in flow and you give me the time and space to do it, we can do it. But because we're rational and process driven, by the way, here's a piece of work, and while you're doing all this work, can you do this? And then you have to say, well, what don't you want me to do, and what's important? you know, because what's important to your boss may not be important to you. And it's a level of capacity and competency. I talk about creative capacity, which is never mentioned in the workplace. You've got a diverse team of people. You think completely different from me, so I can't work with you. No, you think differently from me, so you've got something there I haven't even thought of. Can you just write it down and we'll talk about it? And you give the people the space to do it. Whereas, oh, this is the way we're going. And then you're completely dismissing people who don't come into the job description or person spec. Whereas people are building diverse teams to encompass everything. And they're losing out on the beauty. This person's bringing something to the room I never even thought of before. You know, who's the person in the corner who'll never speak and suddenly put their hand up and say, have you thought about doing this? And then they get dismissed out of hand. And they say, well, I'm not going to speak to you ever again. I'll just carry on and be invisible.
Yeah, sure. So then they're not just doing a disservice to their team, but they're not going to get as good end results because not everybody's going to be working to their maximum potential, I suppose, as it is. But yeah, it's having the knowledge that and having the understanding and compassion, I suppose, in a way that, yeah, people have got different ways of, well, viewing the world. Perspective is one thing. And then how they deal with and how they work best. So what you're saying is what you're saying to get people just into the flow, the going out into nature, just having a break, forget your to-do list, just breathe, enjoy nature. That's going to get you in the flow so that when you come back into the workplace, you're going to be you're going to get the most out of them. Is that what you're
yes, and also, you know, the plan is that I was due to do all this work, you know, take people out for a day, half a day. That's what I do. Go and look at the water, look at the flow, look at the plants, and just ask yourself some question. How has that been built in a way you haven't thought of before? You know, it's a bit like you've got a box of Lego. I'm going to build something and there's no plan. Nature regenerates itself in a beautiful way. It's a bit like you've got a team of people and someone suddenly says, oh, I'm leaving at the end of the month. I've been here for 10 years and I'm going to another job. And I go, okay, why are you going? Because I'm going to a new challenge. So a week to go before they leave, someone comes in and said, can you tell me what you do? Well, I've been doing this for 10 years. Well, where is it? Well, it's either in my head or it's in a cupboard somewhere with 1,000 pieces of paper, right? So basically, people have got their own knowledge cupboard, and I used to build these all over the world. And what it is that person leaves. It takes between 6 months and a year to replace that person. And at the same time, they haven't captured what that person did in the workplace. Oh, I worked on these projects and it's in a cupboard and there's 500 filing cabinets and I'm in there somewhere. And people don't look at that and they don't regenerate the knowledge and the information, the wisdom that person has to say, this person's leaving, right? We better capture this. We better know what the connections were. And then you might spend 3 to 6 months getting someone to find out what this person did. And you've lost that creative capacity in the team. Yes, you may have someone in parallel who can work like that person, but they're not that person. And that person's cupboard has never been captured. And then suddenly people say, why did they leave? And then all these other stuff come out. Yes, people want to be promoted. They want to be more money. But if they're not being recognized or they're being overwhelmed, they're saying, I'm going for a different life now. And as you said with the COVID thing, this is the question people are asking. Is my life worth all this stress? And then it may manifest itself in different ways down the line.
Absolutely. Have you seen a huge change with what you do with, you know, working with different teams? Have you noticed a big change from pre-COVID?
Oh, yes. There's been a huge polarizing shift. You're at home, you're not off. What you're doing, you know, I've set you up in an office, which is beautiful. I either trust you or I don't trust you. If I trust you, here you are. I'm giving you the infrastructure to do it. And you can, I mean, Siemens, I think they employ 58,000 people. And they put something out saying, if you work 3 or 4 days from home, you can have a day off. As long as you deliver and you have the infrastructure to do it, will allow you to do it. So I think the hybrid model is working. However, at the same time, there's other people who've been saying, right, what you're doing at home, you've logged on, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you've gone for a cup of tea, you've done this. And the people saying, right, and then at 5 o'clock, they can't switch it off because, I'll just look at the email, I'll just see who's phoned me, because they're not actually in a physical building at work, but in a physical building, which may be their office at home. So people haven't recognized to switch off. So there's a juxtaposition there. Do I switch off at 5 o'clock and wonder how many emails I'm going to get at 9 o'clock the next morning? And this is what's really overwhelming people. The email is so important. Well, if someone died or there's a building on fire, well, forget it. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
There you go. So we're just wasting a lot of energy. It sounds like people are wasting a lot of energy on unnecessary to-do lists, like, you know, going through your email, and for what? And for what end? What is the end goal there, if you like? You know, what's the purpose of it, or is it just to keep people busy doing nothing? It's not really. What's it achieving?
Well, it's really interesting. It's really interesting that people are doing. I was talking to a colleague, and they were doing 4 or 5 back-to-back Zoom meetings that lasted an hour, and I said, how many items were on the agenda? 23 items on the agenda. And this person said after half an hour, they went to sleep. And I went, I understand that. So for me, here's an agenda. The meeting's an hour. We're talking about 2 things. That's it. If it's really, really important, we can talk about it afterwards. But this is what we're doing, and then go and have a rest. And there's people being told to go to meetings to find out if they're still alive, if they're still working, if they're still part of the team. You know, there's 10, 12, 14, 20 people in the room going, oh, you're all here, thanks. So why are we here? Well, haven't you seen the agenda? No. Well, since I wrote it, it's changed. And people go, oh, this is ridiculous. Things have come up. Yes, things have come up. But again, how are they important on this quadrant you have? You know, is it really important? You know, there's a whole set of measures you can do. But again, from an individual and collective point of view, how is it affecting the individual and how is it affecting the collective? And there's almost a blurring going on now. You know, oh, just build to do it. I'll just ask this to build this. While they're doing this, do that, with no thought of how much work they've actually got. And also, if you've got this hierarchy and leadership that's not working or working, then there's going to be pressure coming from the top and at the bottom to deliver. So people are stuck in the middle.
Yeah, sure. I suppose there is, like you say, I suppose different companies may be dealing with all of this in different ways. Like you say, I know, you know, I've heard that for some people, this monitoring them, which again is causing stress because, what have you been doing? Yeah, how many strokes on the keypad have you done in the last 10 minutes? So you said earlier about the trust things. I mean, that is just huge. So, you know, how is that making people feel, knowing that their bosses are totally monitoring and having to go through your working day, feeling that your every move is being watched? That can't be good for how they feel appreciated in the company. It's a trust thing, isn't it?
I mean, I did a whole video on trust, mistrust, and distrust in the workplace. So you've got that from an individual and a collective point of view. So it's a bit like, I trust the company, but I don't trust the person who works for them. Or I trust the person, you know, but the company you work for, you know, how would you go in? I mean, I've done lots of Zoom calls over the past 18 months. And there's a few people I trust, and I've never met them. But there's other people I just wouldn't trust. And is that logical or rational, or is that more an emotive and gut feeling? And you've got the two going on. It's like, you know, you've got a big company. Oh, by the way, we've just signed a huge, great deal with this company, and I want you to trust them. You know, we've just done it. And went, well, what does that mean? We just signed this deal worth millions, and they're a good company, and I know the CEO, and I want you to trust what we're doing, without any thought, communication, what's happening. Oh, but we're delivering this. This is the plan for the next year, 18 months. And you go, oh, when did you start putting the people who actually work for you on this horizon to actually deliver this? Yes, it's really interesting. And I think when you go out, I mean, I'm going to meet some people I haven't met since January on Zoom, and I'm going to meet them in about the next 2 or 3 months. That's going to be really interesting. And there's a dichotomy going on that, you know, I've actually got some of the work I've done on Zoom would never have happened if I had to drive 2 or 3 hours. And the connections there, some of the connections are absolutely wonderful. And I've never met them yet.
Right.
And you've got this real...
It's a real mix, then, isn't it? There's so many good. There's a lot of good that's actually come out of it. Believe it or not, yeah. I know it's sometimes hard to see that, but there definitely is. I mean, and I think especially in this country, you know, Zoom sort of pre-COVID wasn't. I don't feel that was utilised as much as maybe sort of in the States or somewhere. Whereas because everyone was backed into a corner and forced, now we sort of, so again, it is about that balance. Some people are totally just zoomed out, aren't they? They've just, it can be quite draining. But like you just said, it's actually lots of benefits out of it because, yeah, there would be connection. So things going on that you wouldn't have been able to do if you had to physically get in your car and drive to that office or whatever. So there's lots of good. So why do you think so many some companies are going down the trust route and they're going to get, like you say, well, you just said it earlier about, you know, well, if you do 3 to 4 days working from home, and if you get the job done, we'll give you a day off. So they know that people can be more productive when trusted, right? And obviously, I suppose from you're trying to encourage them to have breaks and get out in nature. They're going to be more in the flow. They're going to be way more productive. So why are some companies getting it and then others, this whole judging, monitoring, punishing if you've taken too long to have your lunch? What's going wrong with these companies?
Well, you have to understand that it comes from the value and behavior of the company. So if people are joining a company and they're aligning to the value, behaviors and cultures, you know, this organization does this and this. And I think COVID has actually opened the doors to some companies who are not actually doing this. And they're trying to rein back or get hold of, oh, by the way, if we don't get this right, we're going to lose more than just what we thought. So I think, again, there's a power struggle going on there. You know, we have to make sure we're controlling everything because COVID's uncontrollable. So it's a bit like we're going to have to flip this to make sure we can do it. And probably they've never had to ask these questions of their staff before. You know, you're working in a team. Are you okay? I mean, you can have a very hands-on boss with a team. You can have a very hands-off boss with a team. But if you mix them up, which happens a lot, and they wonder why the team isn't performing, and we have to retrain the team, which I've done, you know, which I've done before. It's a bit like this boss is value and behavior is different from the team he wants to deliver. So right. basically, I'll give you an example. So basically, company's not working properly. Customer service is not very good. These two teams are working like this. So they found out that instead of doing that one boss was very hands-on, nurtured them, did everything right. The other person, this is the job, left them alone. They didn't have that. Touchy-feely is the wrong thing, but you know where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. So basically, it was a style of leadership and management that was affecting the team. So in the end, you turned the bosses around, and it worked. That's all you needed to do. You know, do you want to come out for a drink on a Friday? Do you want to? Yeah. Other people say, "Do you want to come out?" No, I want to go home now. I've got kids. I've got childcare. I've got this. And the guy said, "Well, why don't you want to come out with me? It's nothing to do with you. There's other things going on." And the people want to be left alone. So you had two teams delivering the same thing in a completely different view, but it was being mismanaged.
Right.
And that's and very simple. We have to retrain everybody because our customer service is not working. No, actually find out what the leadership and management traits of the people who are looking after the team align to the team's behaviors. And that was really interesting because that's what people do. Right, let's retrain everybody to deliver this differently. No, let's find out what you do first before you do anything and how you do it. And we don't use this approach. By the way, we're coming in to change the company. Well, what's the history of the company? Well, it's not working, so scrap it. And they wonder why it goes wrong.
Amazing. Well, you just said there about nurturing, and it just goes to show that, at the end of the day, we've just said earlier that we are all different. We've got different ways of things, but also we are all human. And we all have, there are certain needs, don't they? I mean, it's famously broken down into 6 basic human needs. And all of us will have our sort of top 2 maybe, or sort of a combination of all in different sort of priorities. But yeah, we all really want to feel appreciated. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in a job, it's not necessarily just the income, the money that you're getting in. It's the feeling of value. It's worthy. Having a team leader or a boss that's just somebody to just go, well done, just to acknowledge your achievements, just goes so far. And we know that it creates loyalty. It's going to, the transient, for some companies, people are come and go. That's not really saying a lot for the company, is it? Because if you were nurtured like that, people are more likely to stay. They're going to be more loyal. Why is that still not happening in some companies? Why did they not get the? Well, they didn't get the memo, did they? They didn't get the email that that's how people work, and that's how to get the most out of people. So where is it going wrong, Bill?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? So it's a bit like I really as someone, I remember someone saying to me, I did a good piece of work, so I sent them an email and went, thank you for that, and they phoned me up and said, why did you put thank you at the bottom of the email? And I went, I put thank you for the bottom of the email because you sat down and spoke to me, and I'm just appreciating the feedback. Well, I thought you were being rude by sending this thank you. I thought you were being flippant. And I went, that's the bit about the language, as we said at the very early on of this discussion. It's about the language and the communication. And it's like, oh, I'm thanking this person, so is this a sign of weakness? No, actually, you're appreciating and valuing what they do. And it's like, I don't want £1,000 bonus, but by the way, can I take the afternoon off to see my child in the school races? That's far more valuable than giving them, say, here's £100. And it's interesting. This is coming out more and more. So, by the way, someone said, if you want, if you get this right, we'll buy you a yacht. Well, I can't sail. So I'm going to sell the yacht and spend something and use the money. And this person got hammered for doing it. They won this prize. And they went, well, what have you done with the yacht? Well, I've sold it. Why? So I can send my kid to another school, so they can be educated better. So it's about the value stream. In business, there's multiple bottom lines, and money is only one of them. If you're money and bonus driven, and you said to someone, would you like something different? Well, no. Whereas other people's bonuses are not necessarily a monetary value, and it's a bit like, well, can I just, as I just said, can I have this off to see my kid in the school play, or can I have a day off without using my leave to do this? And then you get, that's it. That's wonderful.
There you go. And that, you're right. And that will go a long way. Whereas some people, it's so rigid. We are. I don't know what you think. I think for a while we have been just living in that. It came from I can't think what comedy show it was. The computer says no, and we have been living in that era. The computer says no. So for certain things, like you say, in with certain companies, if somebody wanted to take no, these are your hours, this is it, and there's no human interaction or a bit compassion, just have an understanding, you know, you can accommodate these things because maybe that person would come in a little bit earlier the following day. But for some, it is that, no, the computer says, no, you can't do that. Do you feel that things then are changing now, when maybe starting to come because of COVID, maybe even because of everything that's happened? Are we starting to maybe come out of that era again, and there be more of a human interaction going on between?
That's a really interesting question, because I've been reading about, you know, people are saying, well, you know, we're all driven by computers. It's all going to be AI, and we're all going to be data and algorithms. And for me, it's a bit like you have to get back to the human factor. If there's things we can do better with data and information, fine. When we've got it, please put it into a formula or a format that the human can understand. By the way, we've got all this data. I mean, you've got data, then you've got information, then you've got knowledge, then you've got wisdom. And it's how you transpose and transfer that into, oh, by the way, this is all happening. Look at what's happening. We've got all these facts and figures. Right, what does that mean? This is what we're going to do. Okay, do we have a team to do it? Do the team understand what we're telling us? By the way, in 5 years' time, this may not happen. Oh, but the figures are right. You know, I'm giving you the figures. It must be right. I mean, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That book that was written years and years ago. And it's a bit like, yes, we've got all this going on underneath, but please, we have to then take the human factor into it and say, the human factor should override this. And maybe one day we have to take the logical and rational process-driven bit out and say, does this feel right? And then people will say, oh, well, you got that wrong because it didn't feel right. Well, actually, I got it right, but your formula didn't work. And we're not having these conversations at the moment. It's like, oh, by the way, if you go out to nature and feel better, well, what a load of bloody rubbish, you know. But there's well-known stuff, especially from the Far East, especially from Japan, going back 50 years, about what it does to you. And actually, there's lots of stuff. There was a hospital, it was in London, and they had two wards, and one of them looked out to a brick wall and one of them looked out to a garden. And it's like, there you go.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, but then people are putting that into such a formulaic, you know, by the way, because from an East and West perspective, the East is about the collective, the West is about the individual. What am I going to do, or what collectively are we going to do? And it's about, let's get the team out there into the river, into the forest to say, right, here's 3 questions. Go away and look at the questions. Go away, see what it does to you. And then the next day, look at your answer. There's no right or wrong answer. But if you reflect on that, because I've been keeping a journal for years, you know, 2 or 3 things. And it's really interesting. So psychologically, if you end up profiling everybody to fit them into these blocks from a hierarchical point of view, and that business is totally that'll work for them, and they'll have the workforce they deserve. But at the same time, people may realize, yes, I went in there to do this, and now I can't do it. Am I going to change, or do I change the system? And there's going to be a big clash probably within the next 10 years to say, where's the power going? Where is this equation going? Or do we have to write a new formula to actually deliver it in a different way and sustainable way as well?
Right. Yeah, interesting. So we've still got a long way to go. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. So some people know what they want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
And we've got.
Yes, it's just like, would you like to come out and do this? And I think what's really interesting, you know, if you work in a big building with a big team and you never go out for lunch, you never go out for a walk, and you're completely immersed, that whole culture is, if you're not delivering, you're not part of the team. I'm afraid if you're not delivering like that, you're going to have to leave. And I've seen that happen on more than one occasion. You know, by the way, this is how we do it. This is what we do. This bang, 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 bang. And then you have no time, and suddenly you realize, well, if I carry on like this, I might not be here in 5 years' time. And is my life really worth doing at that? And what are your priorities? Because we've all done it. We've all done this. And I've worked this one day, done that. And well, hang on, do I really want to do this? Or when you're 65 and retired, wouldn't it be wonderful? Will I ever get to that stage?
Yeah. Might not make it at that rate. And that's, well, I mean, and that's, well, I suppose we've all known that for a while. You know, people who work in the city, it's known for, it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable working environment. Mm-hmm. So, they've got to look at the long term. Surely it would be better to maybe have a more sustainable working structure. So again, that they don't have this, because if something's not sustainable, they're going to have people coming in, leaving in. You've got to retrain and all this wasted energy. Whereas if they were, again, a little bit more accommodating for the different types of people or their specific because everyone's different. Somebody who's got a kid versus, I don't know, somebody looking after an elderly parent, or you don't know what's going on in their lives. But if they just finally actually be a little bit more accommodating for all of this, then they won't have to retrain people. People will be more happy in their work. Like you say, getting out into nature. I mean, it's huge. Do you think people are totally underestimating the power of this?
Well, let's flip that. So basically, you're working all these hours at work. It's affecting your mental health and well-being. And suddenly nothing happens. And then it gets worse. And then instead of having a one-to-one, you have to bring a team along to make sure that person's going to be okay. It's like you have to bring the crisis bus into their life because it's become so overwhelming. Well, it's health and well-being. Oh, well, you take half an hour off, you'll be fine. And then it gets worse. It magnifies the situation. Gets worse. The performance isn't working. They're not working to the level you thought they would. There's people got burnout, but it's not recognized till it gets to an extreme. And the cost of not doing it is quite frightening, not just from a monetary perspective, but from the person's health, well-being, and the company and the team. So for me, it's like, yes, let's put health and well-being there, but please balance it into the overall picture you're doing. Not just let's go on a first aid course to see how you feel. I understand that completely. I'm not being disrespectful, but there's a whole thing going on that this is part of your life and infrastructure. This is what it's like. And it's like, who do I go and talk to, phone to, or anything? Well, I thought you're a really strong person in the team. How dare you show a weakness or a vulnerability? No, you're no use to the team, I think. And then it gets escalated, and then it goes in completely different routes where actually, can I just talk to you? I feel I'm a bit overwhelmed.
Right.
And people need that space to do it. Oh, by the way, I'm doing 100 hours this week. Is it possible to have a few hours off? Because well, if you're not, the rest of the team are doing 100 hours, you're not a team player, Bill, we may have to look at this in a different way. And you go, oh my God.
Yeah, that's not really helpful, is it? Really?
No.
I mean, no. We are. Do you not think that companies are a lot more aware, because there's been so much talk about mental health in the last couple, even pre-COVID, really, it was starting to sort of come out. And do you think that due to what's gone on in the last year, the companies are having to have these conversations now, because they do understand that mental health is a huge issue? So do you see things changing?
I think one thing from a prescriptive point of view, people will be frightened of getting sued. You didn't put this in place, so I'm going to sue you because my mental health and well-being was. I can't go to work again because it was. I think on one level, from that perspective, but I think on another one, it's becoming so much more to the fore, and it's almost a double-edged sword. Where there's a healthy and unhealthy aspect of mental health awareness, which people will use to the positive and the detriment of the company. But I think yes, I think it should be. This should be running through the whole company, And for me, it's not just an HR issue. HR would own the health and well-being. Yes, when you join the company, you've got this. That's good to know. This is the policy and procedure for health and well-being. Yes, but at the same time, how do I go down a route without feeling that I've got to formalize something when I just want to chat? Oh, by the way, you've raised this, so now the book gets opened and tick, 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 and you're going, well, if I'm going down this route, how would that make me feel? What would it look like? what are you actually putting down on my file here?
Yeah.
And if I wanted to leave, would this be raised? Whereas it's just, what are you going to put in place to make me and the individual and the team be okay? Because that's all sometimes what, and where does all the work get done? The work gets done, it's not in the formal Zoom meetings for 3 or 4 hours, but can I sit down and have a cup of coffee with you? This is what's going on. And that's the bit that's missing from Zoom.
Yeah, there you go. And that's quite interesting what you just said there is, I can see that being, sometimes a positive or a negative, because it's become formalized. No, it's become a very, so the whole natural, spontaneous, just kind of have a quick chat becomes yes, it's lodged. Everything's logged, and that's going to be sort of stressful in itself. So, what is it that you do, Bill? What do you have a program that you take into company? How do you work?
I work by saying, like, let's go out for a walk, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions. How is your team communicating? Can you tell me what you all do in the team? Right, we do this, this, and this. Right. So, what is your? So basically, it's like, what is your language and communication like? That's really important. So it's a bit like what we said at the beginning. It's that very miscommunication. So, but basically, I'm writing a couple of ebooks at the moment about communicating in a different way, and then underline that with regeneration and regenerative models in a team. Like what we're not capturing in a team that we've never spoke of before or never worked of before, and then use the metaphor of nature and the river and flow to see how the team can be in flow in a different way. It's like, can I go and switch my flow on? Well, maybe on one level you can, but it may not work for the other person of the team. So how do you communicate with that person in the team? It's like, you sit around a campfire, or you sit around in a circle and you say, right, can you just ask one question you never asked before? And there's nothing off limits. And it's like, well, I never knew you thought like that or understood that, because you never asked, because it was a formal situation where there was an agenda. And it's about getting out of that almost agenda formalized way, but going into a safe space to say, you know what, it's okay to do this and be here, and that's fine. The big problem you have is, how do you take that back into the workplace? I can go and give you a certificate of attendance. You attended this, you did that, you put it up on the wall, and then you go back into work, and the system disempowers you straight away, because you've actually said, oh, I can now do something different. I can now ask something different. So on one level, you become perceived as a threat to your other team members or a boss. And that's one of the key things that people, I'm sending you in this course. It will look good. Bang, here you go. Certificate on the wall. Bill is now empowered. You walk in the door. You're not doing any of this work in here, Bill. I've sent you on the course. Just sit down and carry on. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot. And again, it comes back to the trust.
Right.
And it comes back to the spreadsheet. You've been here 5 years. I'm going to send you on a course. Well, why now? Well, it's like we're always learning. And if you have a learning culture, I mean, I've been learning all my life. I read every day. I do different stuff every day. And it's like, this is what you're doing. And then when you build a diverse team, you've got all this knowledge, structure, as I said to you at the beginning, we've got all this untapped, and we're not regenerating a team in a different way. Well, we've done this project before, right? Why didn't it work? Because the people aren't here anymore, right? Can you go and find out what they did? Right, that's why it didn't work. But we can take that goodness out of it and say, right, we're going to do it differently, but we're taking key tenets of that worked.
Right.
And that's one of the key things I do. You've got this wonderful cupboard. Tell me what you've got. Oh, well, I just do this. What do you mean you just do that? And you do that as well. Oh, well, yeah. And it's about the recognition again.
Right. They're not even aware of what it is they're bringing to the table.
No. They're not being allowed to be aware, yeah.
No. So they get a chance to actually voice what they're
Yes.
what they're doing and their worth. So how do you what are you looking for? Are you looking for companies to work with? Are you looking for
Well, I've done across the board. I've done from corporate to global to SME. So for me, it's like, I'm quite happy to work with a small team or the point is at the moment it's about you have to go through a whole huge hierarchy, don't you, to get to, oh, by the way, this will be really good for your company. Whereas the smaller ones will say, yeah, we need something for a day. That'd be really good. And I would say, yes, that's really good. However, comma, I want everyone to do this. It's no use putting, oh, we'll put the senior people on it. The senior people come in, big piece of paper. Oh, hello, I'm the senior person. By the way, you people down there, no disrespect, but that's what happens sometimes. I've gone on this course and I'm wonderful. Right, can I go on it? No, actually, for me, everyone should go on it.
Right.
Because then they're bringing all this differentiators, you know, and it's like this flow thing. If they all went on the course and it was, you know, phased, it'd be wonderful. Because then they'd understand what the senior people told them, which on one level, their staircase is different. No, I'm an executive, so I'm on a different step to you. I'm so much better than you. So you're here and this still happens. But then if you do that, they say, you know, that course you went on 6 months ago, I've just done it. And I learned this. And this person said, well, I never got that. Do you want to come down and discuss it with me? And that's opened up possibilities people have never thought of before because they've never had that conversation.
Right. So anybody's listening out there that has a team, that maybe, then it's things aren't working as they want it to, and maybe get in touch with Bill. So you do what, afternoons or full days?
Yes.
Just to go out and see what they can then bring back into can you give any sort of stories or testimonials or what can be achieved after?
Well, it's interesting. I was doing some work with a social enterprise and they had a communication problem with the boss. And I said, like, let's reframe it completely differently. And I'm going to ask you a question you've never asked before. And I only changed one word in a sentence. And it worked. That's all I did. And they asked the question a different way. And I went, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. So it created a new dialogue. Because that's what's really good. If you give someone an answer, you've closed the next question.
Yes.
I've given you the answer. Right. Okay, what do I do now? No, I've given you the answer. Go away and do it. But I'd really like to ask you another question because out of that answer, something else has shown up. No, I've given you the answer. Or who wants to ask a question? Right. Why would you ask that question? Because at that moment in time, it came up. And I'd really like to ask that question because it affects me and the team and the business. I mean, the video I've got up on my website is called I Am a River to My Team. And it's all about, you know, are you challenged? You just want to, are you swimming, floating, or drowning? And this is what's happening with companies. Do you just want to get out and go somewhere else? Or, you know, if I gave you a float, would you float? If I gave you something to allow you to float in a team, would that be all right now? But when your float's taken away or your support's taken away, would you then drown? Because people are drowning and being overwhelmed in data, information, knowledge, and work.
Absolutely. So for them to find you, can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch or your website?
You can find me at thedisruptiveinnovator.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Bill McAllister Lovett, and I have my own YouTube channel called The Disruptive Innovator.
Awesome.
And
fantastic.
It's just so thank you. But you know, I'm now looking. The sun's now shining. The trees are now moving. I went to the beach yesterday, where we are, and I sat on this seat, and the sun was there, and the water was there, and it was glistening. And on either side of the seat and the beach, it wasn't glistening. And I remember seeing this as a child, but I mean, yesterday it was just, why is that doing that there and not doing it on the other side? So when I knew when I was coming to talk to you today, why is that team functioning there and that team there and there not functioning?
Right.
And it's like, it's about understanding the connection we have. It's like, you know, one of the stories was, you know, the team's not functioning. Here you go. Go and make them into a high-performing team, whatever that is. And they performed. That was team A. Then team B, 6 months later, got really annoyed, being jealous of team A. So then you do team B, and then you do team C. And after a year, team A's gone to where team C were. So it's a complete cycle again.
Keep it
And
going.
this is what happens all the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bill.
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very, very interesting. I think people now know on a certain level the importance. I think people are more appreciating the importance of actually getting out into nature. So what it can do for the psyche, what it can do actually on the physical body by reducing stress and that. So yeah, communicating with nature for well-being is, absolutely essential. So thank you for your time. Thank you, listeners. I will be back next week with a Coffee with Karen. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye. All the best. Bye.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.